I am willing to debate anyone on this topic, and since it is a very controversial topic, and people are inclined to want to prove me wrong anyway, I'll offer $500 if you can convince me with the facts and with a fair scale that does not consider the affliction done to the enemy disproportionately. You must first acknowledge that the punishment must fit the crime. And if one side is to suffer more than the other, it should be the aggressor, not the victim. Furthermore, you must also acknowledge that the main consequence of the terrible act must be addressed with the scales of justice in a way that is in accord with wisdom, fair play, and true morality. And I'm not necessarily talking about a religious perspective. I'm talking about what is fair. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the case of sterilization and sabotaging someone's love life. And then I'll move on to talk about women. Both these topics need to be addressed, but I will pay $500 if you can prove me wrong about one of them to my satisfaction, which is not impossible if it is possible. But if I am right, then it is impossible. So first of all, we know that in Nazi Germany, hundreds of thousands of people were forced sterilized. We know that 60,000 people in America were sterilized from the early 1900s to about 1984 or something like that. Well after MKUltra had supposedly ended. One could view eugenics as an experiment, an unethical experiment that was approved of at the highest levels in society. People with reverent power and legitimate power, presidents, etc. They did not prioritize ending eugenics. Even a lot of presidents that people remember fondly, such as JFK. So, first I'd like you to consider, why should evil men be allowed to have children, to plant their seed and watch them grow healthy and happy, while good men who are their victims are denied that same natural and unalienable right? You know, they should not be separated or alienated. They should not be forced to lose that right or deprived of it. So I'm just going to get to the meat of my argument now. If I was to sterilize somebody secretly, with or without the law on my side, and I had 3 beautiful children, and I intentionally did so, or I knew that it was a possibility, for me to pay this person does not truly equate to justice. No, justice would be for me to lose all 3 of my children and to be sterilized. That way, the main transgression is addressed fairly, equally. And that is that I'm deprived the privilege, or rather the right, to have children and spread my seed. You see, in the process, my children will be disposed of. However, I am the transgressor. So if one side is to suffer disproportionately more, it should be the aggressor. I'll give you another example. Say I stole $1 million from somebody with several million, and they had no family. You know, they could survive that hit. You know, they're not going to go broke as a result. And the court said, you know what, you did this person wrong, you lied to him, you ripped him off, you defrauded him, you owe him $1 million. And I said, Your Honor, I have 3 kids. What will happen to my family? They'll suffer too. They will suffer too. Is the judge to say, you know what, you're right, only pay him $50,000? No, that is not equality. You see, you need to separate yourselves from the idea that these innocent people will suffer too. The fact of the matter is, they should have thought of that before. The fact of the matter is, justice must be served. Now, the only argument the opposition view can make is, how is that fair to the children? Well, you need to see that this crime is so heinous, so abhorrent, so unethical, that it demands an extreme response so that other people do not make the same error and mistake. Also, you must see that a family is a unit. Ironically, they call some apartments and stuff, they say, well, there's this many units in that apartment complex, you know, this many homes, you know, apartments, units. The family's a unit. It is not enough to say, well, we'll sterilize this guy too, because he still have kids. He still gets to watch them grow. So the victim is suffering more than the transgressor because you don't want to do what must be done? You see, sterilization should be so far out of the realm of desire, so far out of the idea of those who wish to sterilize people, you know, so far out of their you know, their train of thought that is not considered. So first, you also must, you must acknowledge the sociological effect. If we do not punish them that harshly, then we may as well not punish them at all. Many of these people have 3, 4 kids. They don't want any more. So how is sterilizing someone who doesn't want any more children anyway a just punishment for the crime? Also consider the case of a mass murderer. He has his family's name. His family suffers. You might say, well, if we convict this guy and put his name on the newspaper, his family will suffer because they have the same name as him. Should the judge say, you're right, throw out the case, don't put it in the newspaper? Or throw out the case because if we even try him, there's a chance it will leak to the paper, to the press. So let's just throw out the case. because we don't want his family to suffer too. I could talk about this biblically, right? An eye for an eye, because that is fair. But I'm going to stay away from religion for this video. You see, what most people don't want to admit to themselves is that you are your father's son and daughter. The sins of the father affect the next generation naturally. Is it not the case that if your father is an alcoholic and beats you, that you are affected? Is it not the case that if your father is an incestuous pedophile, that you are affected? The sins of the father naturally affect the children of that man. And so it is that if anyone contributes to the covert sterilization, their children should be disposed of. And they should be sterilized. And depending on what other crimes were committed, they should be executed. If that is the just recompense for their respective iniquity.